What is up, guys? We are live here. Welcome to the Bags to Riches podcast. I'm Zach Ginn, your host. Guys, I am so pumped up for this one today. We have one of the best people in virtual wholesaling here, Greg Helbeck. Today, he is going to share thousands of dollars like gurus are charged for this stuff. He's going to give it all for free. He's going to share how he is doing so well in virtual wholesaling, living the life on the beach, skateboarding, and just doing deals on the laptop. He's going to share with you how he's doing so well at such a young age. It's weird for me to say, but he is. So thanks so much for coming on today, Greg.
Dude, I'm happy to be here. I had you on my show a couple weeks ago, and it hasn't went live yet. But dude, I was super impressed by your stuff, and you're even younger than me. So it's an honor to be a guest on the show here. And my goal is to be as helpful as possible to your listeners.
Boom. That's what we're trying to do here, guys. So before we get started, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. The more people that follow me, the more comments that you get, and then the more value that Greg will give. So please like this video and we can get started. So Greg, let's get this out of the way. For the people that don't know you, how did you get started in real estate wholesaling?
Yeah, man. So I was in college. I was playing hockey for a couple of years, and I wanted to go to the pros. Didn't work out. And I had to go back to college, man. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life after hockey. So I was in community college. I was 20. I was a little bit younger than you. And are you 20 or 21?
I'm 21.
Okay, so I was a little bit younger than you. And I was like, dude, I need to get rich. Honestly, that's what I was thinking. Just being straight up with you. And I basically started reading books and personal development books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all that stuff. I did a couple day trades and didn't like it. And then I discovered this thing called wholesaling by my friend. Actually, he got a Snapchat and he sent me a picture of the postcard. Ironically, he got in the mail about a seminar coming to town. Went to the seminar, and I don't know, I'm not super religious, but I just felt like maybe God was tapping me on the shoulder, and they were like, do this real estate thing, because I got this feeling in that seminar, this is what I'm going to do. And I made my mind up that day. I was going to be an investor, and I was like, all right, let's give this a go here. I went all in. I didn't tiptoe in or anything, and bought a $2,000 upsell from that free seminar, typical guru model. And before they pitched the $90,000, coaching call with a guy in India, I decided to just take action on my own. And, and I was like, all right, let me figure this out. So I spun my wheels for a couple of years. I did a few deals here and there. And, really 2 years into doing the business, to be very transparent with you, I started making real money in the real estate business because I started getting pretty good at marketing. Because I knew that was really the business I was in. I think at the beginning, I was kind of chasing a lot of different things. I thought I was a real estate investor. I didn't understand I was a marketer. And after, a couple, deals every few months, I was like, well, what if I just focused on getting leads and talking to these sellers? And then if I did that, maybe I would do more deals and make more money, which was the ultimate truth. So eventually realized I had to get good at marketing. And from there, I started virtual wholesaling in Texas originally, and I made a bunch of money down there before list stackers were popular, before everyone knew where vacant houses were. I was kind of going to them before any of these softwares and just cleaning up down there, and done a ton of virtual deals in Texas. I don't really do business there anymore, and now I mostly focus in New York, where I'm from, up in the Hudson Valley, and then also in San Diego now. Started marketing out here, and I got me some pretty good deals so far. So that's Greg in a nutshell. I also rehab, wholesale, and have rentals as well besides wholesaling. So I kind of do it all for the most part. And man, I love this business. I think it's super fun, and the sky's the limit.
Yeah. So the one thing about your story and about you, a lot of people might not know, is it's very similar to the way that I like to market. So again, Marketing is the lifeline to this business. I'm telling you, you can be the best salesman ever. John Martinez can work for you for free. If you don't give him leads, he ain't going to convert, and he ain't not going to do too well. So
qualified leads.
Qualified leads, yes. And the reason why I like your stuff so much is because you get leads very cheap, and most people spend a fortune getting leads. So let's start from the beginning here. So in your marketing business right now, how are you getting leads virtually for so cheap?
Yeah, so there's a few things you can do. And this is a mistake I made when I started, man. I was trying everything, and I wasn't really productive at anything. I was just kind of throwing a bunch of stuff out there. I wasn't calibrated. I wasn't targeted. I didn't run things on a 6 to 12 months, outline. I just would do a bunch of stupid stuff. So really, to get leads on the cheap, you got to understand at the end of the day, what are you going after, right? You got to pick a niche to go after, and then you got to really go deep with that. So to give you an example on how I get really cheap leads is, every list that you have, right? Every list you buy, tax delinquent, vacant, and not vacant, tax delinquent, equity, code violations, any list you can think of. Out of that specific data set, there's a specific amount of properties on there that are actually vacant, and the post service actually tells you that they're vacant. So what I like to do is I like to take all these lists that are broad or niche lists and flag all the vacant properties. And then once I have the sub list of vacant properties, I like to go really deep with that set of data and then market to those properties because they are vacant and they're also on whatever list I pulled, high equity, tax delinquent, foreclosure. And, by marketing to sellers that way on like a really niche list, and also not by mailing them, I still mail them too, but if you don't have a lot of money, you can text message them, you can cold call them on your personal phone because it's not really a broad list, it's more of a niche list. And dude, I'll be transparent, the numbers have changed since it got a little bit more competitive, but a couple of years ago, dude, I was doing this and I didn't even understand what I was doing, honestly. I was getting leads for probably $20 if I were to average all out, but I needed 6 leads to get one deal, dude. I'm not kidding. It was laser targeted marketing. These properties did have title issues. So like they were kind of a pain in the ass to close. Like there was a lot of different errors and there was a lot of distress and like these houses were really damaged, but nonetheless, it was insanely profitable. And every 6 leads I was getting one deal. That is not the case that, in 2020 now with all the competition, but it still works. So that's like the way that I really get these cheap leads. And not only are they cheap, but they're really targeted leads, because if you think about who's your ideal customer in this business, it's not somebody who has a really nice house that wants the most money for it, right? If you're talking to people like that all day, you're going to quit the business because you're going to spend your, or you can just get a real estate license and list them, because that's what I do with my leads like that. I refer them to an agent. Yeah. You're a problem solver, right? You buy homes that need work from people who don't really want to get top dollar for them, because if they want a top dollar, they wouldn't be on the phone with you, right? So, man, that's like the best way I still get cheap leads, man. I mean, doing that is always been a profitable venture for me. And even with more people doing it, like I still can squeak deals out because I have a system, like basically where like the harder they are to find, the more I pursue it. And like by the time I get in touch with that owner, like, dude, I've been trying to get in touch with them for months. When I do get in touch with them, they're going to sell to me for the most part, because they're like, oh my God, like how the heck did you even find me? Like, and I'm like, yeah, you don't want to know how I found you. It was really hard, but do you want to sell your property? And usually they do, because if it's vacant, it owes taxes, etc.
Okay. So yeah, your marketing is really good like that. I mean, one thing I can point out here is the best time to be a marketer in wholesaling was yesterday. I remember I used to cold call when I first started 3 years ago out of my dorm room in college, and I would just cold call a high equity list.
Yeah.
I'd make like 12 grand in wholesaling fees a month by myself. And then when Rick started, 2002, it was just like, when I started, I had to put a postcard out and get a 20% response rate. Talk to Ron LeGrand, and you just knock on a door, get a deal. So guys, you might hear like me talk like we're old men over here talking about the good old days, but the best days was yesterday. So in 2 years, you're going to be begging for times like this. So, oh man, marketing, it's always funny hearing about the good old days.
It's true, dude. But the benefit to that, so I think, and I like how you're kind of going here, like, it's more competitive now and it's harder to get deals, but here's the big benefit to that, dude. And you obviously know this. When you get a deal in 2020, it's so easy to sell the thing for top dollar, because there's such demand for deals, whether it's a rehab, a wholesale, a freaking wholesale. Like, dude, I just wholesaled the property last week virtually this is a $30,000 condo. I'm in contract for $30,000. I'm going to make 24 grand on a double close wholesale deal on a $30,000 property. The ARV isn't even 100 grand. So like the spread is big. And I had a bidding war on that property, and people were begging me for this thing. Like I literally was on the phone with both buyers and doing a bidding war. So like it's so easy to sell wholesale deals in a competitive market. That is, I would argue, almost better versus having deals be fine, but harder to sell. Because at the end of the day, you're only going to make money when you sell the property, right? So, I mean, that is something I really like about these tough markets that are competitive.
I'm telling you right now, when a real estate market shifts, it's the complete opposite, where it's really easy to get a deal, but selling it's impossible.
Yeah.
That sucks. Oh my
hard.
God.
Yeah, it's super hard.
I've never been there. Rick, my dad did it all the time. It completely sucks. So you guys are just, it's coming. You guys need to learn the dispo also, but I 100% agree with you on that.
For sure, dude. I mean, nowadays I have a lot of people, like, I do some sales consulting with people, and like, they want like to pick my brain on my disposition process, and they're disappointed when I tell them like, honestly, I send an email and it sells. And like, that's like literally what I do. And it's like, and that's my market. Other markets might be different, but I've noticed that if you have a deal and there's demand for the deal and it's not in like the middle of the woods, I've actually done deals in the middle of the woods, believe it or not, but you can sell it pretty easily because you are the person, the wholesaler is the one in control. It's not the other way around. I see a lot of wholesalers beginning, they get jerked around by buyers. And I learned this from Todd Toback, they're cash buyer employees, and they're at the mercy of these buyers. And I'm like, dude, like that's not how you do it. You got to be the other way. They're fighting for your deal, not the other way around.
Yeah, I agree to that. I mean, I think another thing that's very similar between us is in our businesses now. I mean, I don't want to have this big ego like train here with you, but like we have some money. We've made some money. We do big deals. Yeah. So we're a little. I'm a little lazy with my marketing. Like we do stuff like direct mail. Yeah. We do things like that where we spend more money, but we get the deal. So now in your market, like how is your marketing right now virtually?
Yeah. So I'll tell you about San Diego, then I'll tell you about New York. I'll give you like straight up numbers, like, cause I'm a big like numbers guy. The better you get at tracking your numbers too, the easier it is to make money for sure. So in San Diego, it's insane here. I mean, there's high competition, high values, and there's a lot of investors. There's a lot of realtors. So with that being said, the marketing channel that I really like in San Diego is not direct mail because your cost is going to be like north of $12,000. That's just the way it is. Unless you have a database that you've been working for a while, but that's not the case with me. So I like text message marketing in San Diego. So to give you some real numbers, I mean, my last time I looked at them, I did like every 33,000 texts, I'm getting one deal, right? So my cost out here is like around $5,000 to $5,500 to get a deal on text messaging, but the average spread is like 35 to 40 grand. So like the ROI,
you said 33,000 texts?
33,000 texts, yeah.
Oh my God.
It's nuts. I mean, it's crazy. That's just the way it is. I mean, but it's profitable. It's still profitable. Like I spent 5,200 and I made 40 on that one campaign. So for me, I'm like, it works, and now I have people on my team doing the text for me. So it's really not too terrible. Cause at the end of the day, you're just kind of shaking the bush to get some reasonable people to have a conversation with. And in San Diego, you need to shake the bush a lot more times, but you can make a lot more money on each deal. But it's more of a long kind of process where the sales cycle is longer because sellers aren't really desperate. But anyway, those are some legit numbers. I did another deal off texting, but I lost money on it. It was like an owner finance disaster. So I wouldn't count that as like a successful deal, but I guess cost per acquisition. Yeah. That was a nightmare. I owner financed some land and lost money, but it's going to be like $5,000 to $6,000 on texting out here, and direct mail will be like anywhere from 10 to 12. In New York, however, I actually don't do any texting in that market because I just know the direct mail numbers so well there, and I'm a little lazy, like you said. So it's like $4,000-ish to get a deal off direct mail if you're going to like average it out. And then if we're doing a wholesale assignment, it's anywhere from like 20 to 25. If we're going to take it down and do a wholesale, it's like 30 to 70. And, rehab deals, I'm not really getting involved in a rehab deal unless we're shooting to make at least 50, if not more. I've done 6-figure deals, but the average rehab profit at the end of the day is anywhere from 50 to 70,000. I mean, that's just the way it is in New York. So it's profitable, right? Everything is profitable. And the cost per deal is a little bit lower in that market because I think there's less competition there versus San Diego. But either way, like the way I look at it, it's like, the way I find out my cost per deal is I just come out with like, how many leads do I need to get a deal? And then how much did each lead cost? And then there's your number right there. So I think if you keep your numbers like straightforward and just track everything, like over 90 days, like if you're a new investor watching this, like it doesn't matter what you're doing, but if you just track your numbers every day, man, you do that for 90 days and you look at your data and you can kind of see where you're at. So it's not too complicated. I think a lot of guys make it seem complicated. It's really not. You just track everything,
I agree with that. I think the biggest thing, it took me 2 years to figure this out when I was wholesaling by myself. Yeah. Marketing, it's not about being this like big, like Frank Kern marketing whiz. It's not being like the expert. It's timing. Timing is everything in marketing. It is. So that's why I love direct mail so much is people, like most of my motivated sellers, when I get a deal from them, they say like, did Jesus come down and give me this postcard? Because I got this postcard at the perfect time.
Yes.
And I told you to F off last month. I mean, have you had that same experience?
Dude, oh my gosh. That's the thing with direct mail that trips up investors, man. They think that they're going to send one drop and they're going to get a laydown. And this just that's not that common anymore. But if you do it consistently, it's all about timing. You can't control the timing, right? You can just control sending the mail out and following up. So like, oh, dude, I get deals all the time where, oh my gosh, I've had your postcard in my drawer for a year. I decided to give you a call. I just need to get rid of this thing. Or, I got one. This is interesting. I got to like reverse engineer how I can get a list like this. But basically, I mailed an equity list and the mail got forwarded to the deceased owner's son. And the deceased owner was like, oh my gosh, I want to get rid of this property right now. It's my dad's house. I live in Virginia. It got forwarded to him there, but I mailed it to New York. And dude, it was like a $20,000 wholesale deal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why did I not just mail this guy originally? Anyway, so it's all timing, man. I got another one. I could have so many examples where like, oh my gosh, we got your card. We've owned this house. We're in South Carolina. We don't want to deal with it. And you can just tell on the phone when you got a good prospect that you can add value to,
I can tell you, like, every time I get a phone call of I'm telling you, every $50,000 deal we've had this year, which we've had like 4 for 2020, like 50,000 plus.
Yeah.
I knew within 30 seconds if it was like a big deal or not. It's weird. Yeah. It's weird, but it's just like, yep, that's 50 grand right there.
Dude, you totally, it's like a sixth sense, bro. You just, and it's like, I'm big on the 80-20 rule where it's like, dude, most sellers who call just trash, follow up, like just don't spend a bunch of time with them. The ones who call who have a potential problem, you spend all your time with them because that's where the money's going to be made. It's not with these, I'm thinking about it now. Those people are good for follow-up, but initially you want to spend time with people who want to talk to you versus the other way around. I think a lot of investors, they're chasing unqualified leads and they're getting burned out.
Yeah, definitely. I think the reason I wanted to talk about timing so much was because in my market, I hit direct mail basically on a monthly basis with a big list quarterly. Yeah. And then I SMS that other list that's not being direct mailed. So it's always timing. Either you get the text at the perfect time or you get like something at the perfect time, the postcard. Yeah, is there a reason why you're not hitting direct mail and SMS and you're doing like 5 channels in New York?
Yeah, honestly in New York, I'm kind of lazy, bro. Like I just know direct mail in that market. I don't have to do it. I just send the mail out and the phone rings. With SMS, it's a little bit more labor intensive. We have to have some VAs really manage that thing. So I'm just kind of lazy. I should be texting them, but I just kind of focus on like San Diego, straight up text message marketing. That's what we're going all into. New York, straight up direct mail. So we have one campaign for New York where we're just laser targeted. We're tracking those numbers. And then it's the same thing in San Diego, but it's with text messaging. And the reason, like I said earlier, with the text messaging in San Diego is because in that market, it's like your objective is to get a lead, right? In order to get a deal, you need a certain amount of leads to get a deal. And it just costs less to get a lead off texting versus mail. So in San Diego, it makes it more economical sense to text these people versus mailing them. I might test some mailing. I have a couple ideas up my sleeve, with kind of getting creative with mail. But either way, I think the big takeaway too that I'd love to add to your listeners is like, you need to get really good at one channel before you go to another one. Like, and I shared this in the beginning. Like I spun my wheels for like a couple years because I didn't understand these channels. I was doing I was kind of, tiptoeing around, but now I've been doing direct mail for a while and I really understand it. I know how to make it work. And then same thing with texting. When I started texting a couple of years ago, I didn't like it because I didn't know it and I would outsource it. Right. And I wouldn't know how to even manage it because I didn't know how to do it myself. So I actually went into the trenches for a bit and like did the texting myself to like see how it works. So now when I outsource it, I understand how it works. I know the numbers and I can manage somebody or have someone else manage somebody. And I know what to expect from like, how many messages you send versus the response rate. So you got to really pick one channel, get good at it before you kind of try to go to another channel. Cause then you'll start like tripping up and being like, oh man, none of this works. I don't know what's going on. But like, you just haven't went deep enough with that one channel yet.
I agree. My problem with like VAs and stuff like that is I'm a control freak with some things.
Yeah.
So with text messaging, hey, have at it. Go at it. When it comes to my direct mail, you are not touching that thing with a 10-foot pole. You're not going to log in anything for me. You're not pulling that list. Like I have to make sure it's perfect. Yeah. Have you had that same thing with direct mail, especially with like VAs and acquisitions managers?
Yeah. VAs, I have do a lot of the text messaging. With the direct mail. Like what I like to do is I have my lead guy talk to direct mail leads for sure, because most of the calls are garbage, and he knows he's really good. Like my guy is really good on the phone. Like I didn't overtrain him, right? So he understands like how to have a conversation. He understands the four pillars. He knows how to he's really, I would honestly trust him maybe even get a contract eventually. He's really good. But in terms of like the logistics of the direct mail, like I still do that myself, because I don't want, because like in terms of sending out the list to the mail house, I want to make sure I have the right phone numbers on there. I want to make sure the sequence is in order, but that doesn't take me that much time. That takes me like, I don't know, an hour. And then once I send it out to the mail house, I'm good for a while, because I'm going to be mailing them for a select period of months. So that doesn't take me too much time, and I need to do it every few months. And then, once I get the return mail and stuff, I'll, have someone go through it or whatever. But for the most part, I mean, I don't have a problem with VAs taking some phone calls in the beginning, but it really depends. Some people are different, but I have a lot of trust in my guy, because he has really good English and he's bilingual. So we just got Spanish lead today, and like I didn't know what to do. I'm like, dude, like, can you call this person? Because I have no idea what they're saying. And he called him. He's like, oh yeah, they had a property, so it's good. He's probably better than me, honestly.
Wow. So who do you use to get your data?
Yeah, there's a few things I do. So there are obviously there's the county, right? So any county you're in, it doesn't matter where you are. Like everybody, oh, my county doesn't have the data. Like most counties, or if it's not in your county, another county next to you probably has it. So I get a lot of the niche lists from my county, right? So in New York, San Diego, just from the county. Another way I get niche lists is PropStream. Actually, they have a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people on PropStream. Like it's great. I've made a fortune from it. You've made a fortune from it. Man, that's a profitable database for me. I get a lot of good leads from PropStream. ListSource, I kind of go like everywhere, man. Like ListSource, I'll get the unknown equity list. And then there's another thing in California. It's called Property Radar. I don't think it's in Florida.
I've heard of it. Of it. Everyone raves about it.
It's pretty good, man. So I get some of the niche lists, like get the joint tenant and stuff like that out on Property Radar in California. I think they're only on the West Coast. They're starting to come east now. So those are the 4 or 5 data sets that I get the lists from. Another thing, this is another like ninja trick. If you're like brand new, have a lot of cash, get really good. And like if you live in Florida, you're in luck, because Florida has like the best public records in the country. I don't know why. But the thing about Florida, you can go into your, like, you got to be really good at using the county clerk site, especially in the beginning, because like the more you understand this, the better. Go into the county clerk's like database online and learn how to look for problems like liens, divorces. All of that stuff is public freaking record. Abatement charges, code violations. That's all in public.
I love
records. Divorce, everything, death, deed type transfers. So really get good at your public records, because if you do that, you can start to maybe get to some of these prospects before the data companies extract them, because that's where they get their stuff from. It's the county clerk. That's where data is stored in the country. I
love it. I can go literally find people that got public intoxication and then an eviction, and I can just boop, 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 boop. Some counties are good.
Yeah, for sure, man.
So where are you skip tracing, and where are you actually SMSing?
Yeah, so Skiptracing, I use a couple different companies. So my first and foremost, man, I love SkipGenie. I think I just have such good data. And I like SkipGenie because you can do a lot of one-off searches, which is what we do on these targeted properties. Like we'll use like the one-off search thing on SkipGenie. So we just like manually go in there. So I use SkipGenie. I also use Lead Sherpa, their skip tracing service to skip trace lists. And then there's another one I use too called SkipForce. I think they're called SkipForce. Yeah, SkipForce. And so I use those 3 different companies, and also IDI a little bit. I have all these. I have like every skip trace company, because you never know which data company is going to have that number that gets you in touch with that seller. So I use those 4 for skip tracing. And then for text messaging, I was using Lead Sherpa, but something happened there where you have to add this weird language at the end, like reply stop
language.
Dude, it cratered, and I left Lead Sherpa, and now I use Launch Control. I don't think you have to say that in Launch Control, so I'm getting a way better. My delivery rate is way higher, because in Sherpa, I think they actually were getting flagged from Verizon. Yep. So it wasn't working, so I had to switch, but it is what it is. So Launch Control is pretty cool. It's really similar to Sherpa. I think it's got more bells and whistles actually, and it's getting text delivered, which is important, because then obviously I need to get delivered in order to be seen. So that's what I'm using on the text message side.
I've heard nothing but good things about that, so I agree with that one
for sure.
So the last thing about marketing here, because you only get Greg Helbeck here about virtual wholesale marketing once, is a lot of these people, they don't have a lot of money, but they want to get into virtual wholesaling. So what would your recommendations for people, like marketing wise, getting into virtual wholesaling with not a lot of money?
Oh man,
20-year-old kid just like you.
That's a great question, because if I started over again, I'll tell you exactly what I would do. So I'd pick one market. I don't like, you can go virtual or you can do it in your own backyard. It's totally up to you, like whatever you want to do at the end of the day. And I think if you're like brand new getting started, like if you could do a deal in your own backyard, it might be better because you can like see the property, but you can do it virtual. It's all good. What I would do is I would go sign up for PropStream. You know, I'm sure Zach has a link there for PropStream. I'd get PropStream. It's like $100 a month and you get 10,000 downloads. You get 10,000 records that you can export. But you can look at as many files as you want. So you basically have access to any property in the country. And I would go into PropStream and I would start like building out like niche lists, like vacant properties that are tax delinquent, that have been owned since 1995, which is a good list. The longer they've owned it, the better chance of a deal happening because it's usually old. And it's like run down usually. So I would build out these like niche lists. And then I would go into SkipGenie and I would one-off search these things, because I think SkipGenie is like it's $50 a month. And then it's like, you get a certain amount of searches and then it's like 13 cents a search. It's really cheap. I would just go in there. I wouldn't have a CRM. I wouldn't get into CallRail. I wouldn't, not yet. And I would get 100 of those properties. I'd make the calls. I'd see what happens. And then I would just keep doing that in batches of 100 until I got a deal. Because if you find like 500 vacant properties with like tax liens or whatever, like there's a pretty good chance you're going to do a deal. Like I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but you're going to be able to generate like quality leads at a really low price. It's going to be a lot of time and effort, and you're going to have to be on the phone for a while, but there's definitely an opportunity for you to make money doing something like that now, especially PropStream's nationwide. So you can do it anywhere. And I would do that, honestly. I think that would if you do that, if you spend like 3 to 5 hours a day of doing that consistently for 90 days, there's a really good chance you're going to make money. I mean, like it's not guaranteed. I don't want to be one of those guarantee guys, but I mean, the math is in your favor if you do something like that, you know?
I would agree. And first of all, I got to say this out in first here, but I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, so I'll let Greg do it. Greg, what's the rule here in, because I see some people commenting, they're from Hudson Valley too, in that area. They want to get started. What's the rule with attorneys and real estate and wholesaling in New York?
New York? Oh, it's tough, man. Yeah. New York's a tough market, man. There's definitely a barrier to entry. It's tough up there because you have to use attorneys to do deals, and you need to put real deposits down. And sometimes attorneys will kill your deals. Like, not going to happen every time. But if you're up in the Hudson Valley or New York City or whatever, and you want to do business there, you need to go through an attorney. You've got to pay an attorney. You know, and it's just different than the rest of the country. So I think a lot of investors there might be in New York and they want to do this, and they're getting their advice from a guy in Arizona or Texas or whatever, which is fine. But when it comes to the transactional like coordination and logistics, you got to listen to a guy like me or my buddy Michael Pinter, who do this in New York every day, because it's different. So you got to, you know, to give you real tactical advice. Let's say you get a deal in the Hudson Valley. You should probably call me because I'll help you with it. Number two, if you don't want to call me, you got to get an attorney. Okay. And you got to tell the attorney what you're trying to do, which is a real estate deal. And then you're going to have to put a deposit down. Usually it's at least $1,000, if not more. And that's just the way it is. Try to negotiate down as little as possible. That's the way it is. Yeah. I bought a rental a couple weeks ago. I had to put down like $6,500, you know, straight hard, like no contingency, like straight $6,500 down. Yeah. But I mean, you know, I was closing anyway, so it didn't matter. But anyway, so you got to go get an attorney, put a deposit down. But here's the benefit. I'm making this sound like it's terrible, and it kind of is if you're brand new. But the benefit being in New York is that once you go in contract and you put a deposit down, you are hard. The seller is not leaving. You're not leaving. That deal's going down come hell or high water. And if it's not going down, there's a lawsuit. Like you can sue the seller and vice versa. So you really can't have investors steal your deal in New York when you're in contract. It's impossible for the most part. And I'm not an attorney, so it's not legal advice. But that's like the real thing I love about that market is when you get in, because you have to go through the attorneys and all the bull crap. When you get in contract on a good deal, dude, number one, you're going to make a fortune. And number two, you can't have the deal get stolen when you're legally in a contract in New York. So you got to use it to your advantage. But you just got to know how to like, you know, set the right expectations, you know, if you're dealing with someone in New York. But you got to use an attorney. You probably got to put a reasonable deposit down. But besides that, I mean, you know, it's a great market. You know, there's you can make so much money on these properties because the values are so high.
Okay. So if you were new in New York, would you try to, virtually wholesale outside?
Oh, yeah, man. That's a good, I would,
It's hard. We got no money. How do you
I
put
struggled.
$6,000 down?
Yeah, I struggled in New York in the beginning because of the attorneys. I would probably do 50-50. And what I mean, I would just do like half my marketing in New York, and then I would do like Pennsylvania or something and like test it. And then like, I'd use like, because New York, you can get like these huge deals like San Diego, but the attorneys make it a lot harder. So then like I would just kind of segment my marketing. I would go like half in PA where you don't need an attorney, and then I'd go half in New York, and I'd kind of like see what's converting better, and then maybe go into New York if I get a deal, or if like I don't get much deals and I get a lot of resistance in New York, I'd just focus more on Pennsylvania. So I would probably do that because you can still drive to Pennsylvania. It's not that far. And you don't have to deal with any BS with attorneys in that state. It's pretty straight up like Florida and Ohio and stuff.
I agree. I do a lot of probate deals, so I deal with old people and attorneys all day. It's made me a very patient man. But
yeah, dude. Yeah, probate. Yeah, the pain in the ass.
So what's some advice you can give to a guy like in the Hudson Valley, new, he's got a little bit of money. How would they find a good virtual market for wholesaling?
Yeah. That's a great question, dude. So what I would do is if you're like in New York and you don't want to screw around with attorneys and stuff, which I would recommend you try in New York, honestly. Like I know it's like, I kind of make it seem like it's hard. It is harder, but it's definitely a lot better once you get a contract. And, we could, they could hit me up on Instagram. I'd be happy to help them out. My buddy, Mike Pinter's like the expert in New York for this stuff. But anyway, what I would do is I would probably pick a market that I can drive to, because I jumped right into Dallas, Texas, when I first started going virtual. Yeah, the reason I did that is because of, number one, I'm in a mastermind called Investor Fuel. It's based in Dallas, so I know a ton of people there.
Mike Hambright,
man. Yeah. I know that area really well, the Dallas market. So that's why I did that. And there's a lot of activity in that market. So I would take the advice from the second thing I just said. You got to find a market that's maybe closer to you, unless you like have a connection in one of those other markets. You got to find a market where there's a lot of demand, because a lot of people, they want to go virtual in these middle of nowhere markets. And you can do deals one-off deals there, but like you can't really get a consistent business going if you're kind of in the middle of nowhere. Because it's just tough because there's not a lot of demand for property. So I would find a city near you, like in the Hudson Valley, maybe like Scranton, Pennsylvania, or like Philly or Pittsburgh or something. Pittsburgh's kind of far, but something like Connecticut, maybe. Actually, not Connecticut. You need attorneys. But find an area that's drivable where there's some serious demand in the city, where it's like a real city. Maybe there's a college there, or there's like a big corporate company there. And I would just make sure that there's legitimate demand for that offer, which is a wholesale deal, right? And if you're in a city where it's really easy to find deals, right? Like you can still wholesale there, but it's going to be a little bit harder to sell them, right? But if you find a city where like there's a lot of cash buyers and they're really hungry for deals, and there's maybe some funds buying there, that's a really good city to wholesale in, because it's going to be easy to get rid of your properties once you get them under contract, and you can close on them yourself if you have some dough, and you can wholesale them or rent them or whatever. So definitely try to go like 2 to 3 hours so you can drive there in the beginning, and then you got to make sure that the city has some demand first. That's how I would pick a market if I was starting fresh, and if I still lived in New York.
All right, so we know how to like virtually find the right market. We know how to wholesale it. So here comes the part where, I mean, you're one of the best in marketing, but here's another secret. Like you teach people sales and real estate wholesaling all the time, especially virtually.
Yeah.
Tell me, how can I become the best sales guy possible?
Yeah, man, I'd be happy to answer that question. So there's a few like pillars, I think, in sales that trip people up. And the first thing you need to do if you want to be really good at selling is you need to understand that sales is a disqualification process. So like the more people you can get out of your funnel initially, it's going to allow you to spend more time with the right people that you can actually help. So I see a lot of people, they have a difficult time with sellers because they're trying to sell a wrench to a seller who wants a screwdriver. You know what I mean? So you got to get in front of sellers who have a potential problem to solve. And I'm not saying just go for laydowns, because laydowns are far and few between, but you got to make sure that you're disqualifying people who are not a fit for your business. And then once you can do that, so that's step number one. Step number two, when it comes to sales, I'd like to make this really like tactical, is you need to understand that if you're dealing with a home seller, right, they're going to have to basically give up some equity, in exchange for an easy, convenient sale. Like that's how like the wholesaling rehabbing business works. Like they're not paying you like a plumber, but they're exchanging equity for some sort of, you know, convenience or speed or whatever the case might be. So you need to get good at asking open-ended questions to find out what the legit problem really is. Like I see a lot of salespeople, like they go in and they ask like really like kind of binary questions. Like, you want to sell quickly, or like, you know, seems like this property is a real issue. Like they kind of make these assumptions and they ask these weird questions. Yeah. And when you ask those questions, like if you ask a binary question, like a yes or no question, you're going to get a yes or no answer, right? Yep. But if you ask an open-ended question, like what's making you think about selling this house, they're going to start telling you all the problems that they're going through. How long has that problem been going on for? Like, so like the better you get at asking open-ended questions, the better chance of the pain of the seller coming out, because they're just going to keep talking and talking and talking. And then when they say something, you ask another open-ended question. How long has that been an issue for? What's been the biggest problem with that? And then they're going to keep talking. And then like I was just doing a deal yesterday, and like I was on the phone with the seller for like 45 minutes. I probably said, you know, 45 words maybe, and he did most of the talking, and I was just sitting there like listening, asking questions. So you got to get good at asking open-ended questions. Like that's a big deal in sales. And then the third thing, if you really want to make sure you're closing every closable deal, is you got to make sure that every time you're on a sales call with a seller, there's some sort of next step that's defined. Whether the next step is them reaching out to their brother, them reaching out to their cousin, them signing the contract, them thinking about what price they want. You know, like there's got to always be an objective at the end of the sales call. So like when you begin a sales call, you have an agenda. We're going to talk about this. We're going to do that. I'm going to answer questions. And at the end of the sales call, we're going to figure out if it's if we want to take a next step. If we want to take a next step, it's going to look like this. If you want to do it, fine. If you don't want to do it, I'm not going to pressure you. There's no hard sell here at all. And the seller feels like, you know, they're dealing with a professional when you do that. You know, they're not dealing with some novice who has no idea what they're doing. And then you're kind of guiding that sale down, you know, to the end, which is either going to be a deal or a follow-up or whatever. But I think those three things are really like applicable. I think right off the bat, if I got to give you a bonus one, like a negotiation, like ninja tactic, I just did this yesterday actually. And it helped me, you know, really find out, you know, where the seller was at money-wise. Number one, I always love when the seller goes first and they tell me what they want for the house, because it just makes it easier. Like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes like the seller wants less than what I was willing to pay, or vice versa. You know, like they seem motivated, but they want 100 grand more than what I'm willing to pay. Yeah. So a good question that I love to ask the seller is like, a lot of sellers, I'm sure you see this, Zach. It's like, I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give it away. I want to sell my house quickly, but I don't want to give it away. You know. So I always say, that makes sense, you know, John, the seller. Let me ask you this. What price would you feel like you're giving it away at? And I'm trying to get them to anchor themselves. Oh, well, if I got X for it, that would be giving it away. And now they've kind of given me a number already, and I kind of know what they won't sell for. So they kind of like anchor themselves. So like that's a real good question to ask. Hey, what price would you feel like you're giving this thing away at? And that question, I'm telling you right now, that thing is like a golden bomb, and it works so well just on most sellers. And it really gets them to kind of like tell you what they want for the property, what they're not going to, like what they won't sell for, basically. So like that question is a good one. And then like, honestly, besides that question, dude, like a question I always say is like, hey, what do you want for the property? Like, I mean, like I keep it really simple. Like I don't overcomplicate it. Like it's really not that complicated. So, I mean, those 4 tips, man, like if you're like a new person just trying to break into the game, I would listen to this podcast a few times, you know, maybe rewind the last 10, 15 minutes and just like focus on those like 4 pillars. And you'll definitely, you know, have better conversations with sellers. I'm not saying you're going to close everyone, but you're going to have better conversations and they're going to be more intentional.
Definitely. It took me 2 years. I'm telling you right now, Greg's giving this info out. It took me 2 years to figure this out. And the way I figured out is pretty stupid, but it is. You figure out this. So like, if you ask, like, let's say you're on a date, you ask your girlfriend this or an old person this, like, hey, do you like strawberries? Yes or no? What do you think about strawberries? Oh my God, you'll go for hours. Same thing with your sellers. It's the wording that you do so closely, it just changes everything. And it's awesome.
Man. I used to do that back when I was single, man. I'd go on these dates, I'd sound like a robot, you know, and then I started learning how to like, you know, have real conversations, you know, and like, hey, how, what, like when you say what, how, and why, it's just like I think it's called interrogative. I think I learned that from a book called Start With No. It just gets the person to start talking. Like if you were to say, Greg, what's the best thing that's happened so far to you today? I'd be like, I don't know, I went to the beach and had some bubble tea or whatever. But like, if you were to say, Greg, wasn't that bubble tea really good? You're just kind of putting me into a corner versus asking me what I really think is important, So get really good at asking open-ended questions. It'll be really beneficial in your sales calls.
It's all psychology. Shout out to Tony Robbins. He's taught me a lot of this stuff. So I know how to sell here. So this annoys me to say this because I've done this all the time here. But I mean, what would you say is the difference between the importance of difference of putting your 10,000 hours into like sales, talking to sellers, and actually having the knowledge to sell? What's the fine line between the two?
I think you got to put the hours in, especially because you need the experience. But I think the best way to like hack your way to success in selling, I mean, like I hate even saying hack because that word just gets overused. I would say if you really want to get good at sales calls, and this is depending on your state, if you can record your sales calls and listen to them, right? And if it's not legal in your state, don't do it. I'm not an attorney. Don't sue me, listeners. But if you can record yourself speaking to a home seller and listen to your sales call, you're going to learn a lot because the reality is it doesn't lie, So if you think you crushed that sales call and you listen to it and you sound like a used car salesman, you're going to start to learn, ooh, I sounded like crap because I didn't do this, or I should have asked that opening question. So that if you want to hack your way to sales success and you can do it legally in your state, record your sales calls, listen to your sales calls at least once a week, if not more. And that'll give you a lot of clarity on like how to have the right conversation, right? Like why didn't you get the deal? Like why did you get the deal? Why didn't you get the deal? So I think, you got to put the work in, unfortunately, but at the end of the day, I think if you can record your sales calls on top of putting the work in, it'll really kind of like speed up the learning curve because you'll like get a lot of real-time feedback from you actually in the field doing the sales training stuff that you probably learned.
So it sounds like nail on chalkboards for me, but
it's bad. I record my sales calls sometimes and I train my guy and I'm like, dude, like I'm going to probably sound like a knucklehead sometimes, but there's no perfect sales call,
If you heard me when I started this business at 17, it was bad.
Yeah, it was. I was probably
voice cracks. Oh my gosh! But
you're young, dude. Better. Holy shit! I mean, I can't. You're 17, man. That's so impressive. I was.
My dad had I'm telling you, my dad has signed the contract for me at my appointment, but that's for another story. But I legally couldn't do that. But so my question here is, this question annoys me a little just because I know how to do it. So it's like But you're probably getting this a lot is like, hey, Greg, virtual wholesaling sounds cool, but what do I say when the 70-year-old seller says, what do you mean I have to sign this over Loop DocuSign? How do you go about that? Like, how do you transition from, okay, Greg, I'll take your offer for $100,000.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there? Because that's where a lot of new people get stuck.
Yeah. So, I don't want to disappoint them, but I mean, if they don't want to sign on DocuSign, then you don't have to have them sign on DocuSign. I did the $40,000 deal in San Diego. I mailed they didn't have I snail mailed it to them. Like it was just a straight up contract. So if they don't want to sign the e-contract, which is that happens, right? Like, let's be honest, that's a little, so if people have never heard of that and they're like 90 years old, like, what the hell's this? Is this a scam? Am I paying my taxes early? So anyway, so there's a few things you can do. You can send a notary to their house with the contract to like actually sign it, which is legit. So you can like physically send a notary to sign that contract and they can, you can sign it as well. Second thing you can do is you can have someone local go there and meet the seller and have them sign. The third thing you can do is you can mail them the contract and you can have them, get it in the mail and send it back. Yeah, I've done that on a bunch of deals. So really don't push back hard with the seller. Like if they want to sell to you and they are like ready to move forward, they just don't want to like sign an e-contract. It's all good. Just, I would either have a notary go there, pay for that. It's like $80 probably. Have them, have someone local sign the contract for you, like take it over, have them take it over there and you can sign electronically on your side, or you can just, mail it to them and they'll get it and, they'll sign it and send it back to you. You can either, I just snail mail stuff all the time, or you can just overnight it. I mean, there's those three ways definitely get you over that objection. And if they want to like physically meet you, that's another thing. You can just have someone else in that market. Like if you're virtual wholesaling, I think you should always have boots on the ground there. Because if you got a big deal on the line and like the only thing holding you back is they want to meet you or someone on your team. Hey, I'm on vacation. I'm not in town right now. You don't have to like lie. Hey, I'm not in town right now. However, my partner or my friend or my construction guy They live here. They'll meet you. They're probably nicer than me. They'll take good care of you. And that's another good way to get around that objection.
Okay. But how would you go from offer accepted virtually to getting them to sign on Dotloop and DocuSign? How would you, if they were open to it also?
Oh, if they're open to it? Yeah. I would say, hey, basically, assuming you're comfortable with this offer, and I would stress test the sale. I'd say, hey, I just want to make sure this is something you want to do. I want to make sure you feel like you're making the best decision. I love to like almost go negative and have them like almost try to throw the deal away, because if they don't throw the deal away, you're good. I would just say the next step would be getting the agreement signed. Never say contract. This is like typical sales BS. Don't ever say contract, because that can scare people. Hey, agreement. Hey, we do our agreements online. It's just easier, for filing. Actually don't say that. Say we do our agreements online. It's just easier for both parties. Usually, if you have an email address, I'll email you over the agreement. We can take a look at it together. We'll do that when we're on the phone, because the key is you want to send them the DocuSign when you're on the phone with them, because you want to be seeing it at the same time with them. Because if they have like questions and comments, you don't want them to like be like not on the phone with you, and then they kind of like click out and they never like sign it or whatever. So you want to get them to, be on their computer when you send them the agreement, and then have, kind of go through the agreement with them when they're on the phone. And then, hey, if you feel comfortable after, we went through this agreement, if you get this thing, e-signed here, I'll get it over to my title company and we'll open up title. And then from there, we'll pick our closing date. So always get them on the phone while you're going through DocuSign in case they have a concern with the agreement. You can like talk to them live on the phone versus letting them kind of ghost you and, I'll get to that next week or whatever. So that's how I would handle it, man. And the thing with when you're getting into like the closing part is you really want to make sure that seller wants to sell you that property, because if they don't want to sell you that property, dude, you're going to find that out one way or the other, when they try to cancel. So you just got to say, listen, Sally, this is a big decision. You sell your house once in a lifetime. Usually I want to make sure that you feel 100% comfortable with this decision. And if you don't feel comfortable, I promise it won't hurt my feelings. I don't want to feel like I'm making you do something you might not want to do. And like saying that is scary when you're new, because you're like, oh my God, what if they say no? But if they say no, then they're never going to sell you anyway. But if they say, oh, let's move forward, then you're good to go. They're not going to back out, most likely.
Wow. I agree to that. Shout out to Todd Toback again. He always teaches ABL, always believing, like that.
Yeah,
that whole thing like that.
Toback. He's taught me a lot of stuff, man. His stuff is really, really helpful, and it works.
Yeah. So guys, comment below your questions for Greg. We're going to do a quick Q&A. Let's see what the people have to ask. So let's go down here. Antoine showing love. What's up? Greg, what a stud. Keep rocking. We got some people here from the Hudson Valley. What's up? What's up? Everyone's saying what's up. So first question here from KS November. Do I have to spend money on an inspector if I want a virtual wholesale?
It depends. I mean, it really depends on, like, I think the more you know your market, the more like the better I can answer that question. Like if you've never done a deal in that market before, I would get an inspection, and I would tell the seller I'm getting an inspection. I'd say, hey, listen, it is a cash offer. I'm not getting a bank loan. However, standard contract, we always get a 10-day inspection. It allows me to do my homework just to make sure everything that we've agreed upon is accurate, and I'm going to pay for it. So I think to answer your question directly, it depends, man. If you are certain on that deal, I would say if the inspection might get the seller a little wonky, maybe not. But if you're not sure about that deal and you got $200 laying around, I mean, I think if you don't have the money for the inspection, I'm not saying you don't KS November, but if you don't have the money for an inspection, that might be a concern to me. But if you do, and you're willing to do that, I think it'll help you either way, because if you get a proper home inspection done, you're going to know a lot about that property. Instead of being like a master of renovation, you pay an inspector $200, have him give you this whole report. I get them done all the time. And now you know what's the deal with that property, what needs to get fixed. So when you go sell that wholesale deal, you're going to know a lot more about that property than you did before you got the inspection. So depends on the situation. I
agree. And he does a follow-up question here. So this is for the California kids over here, because this is definitely not with it. But how would I find the percentage of ARV if I'm doing virtual wholesaling? I know the 70% rule doesn't work for everyone. Definitely not San Diego.
Oh, San Diego, that'd be interesting. Let me see. I did the big wholesale. I don't know if it was 70%, but basically man, you really need to 70 cent. The 70 cents on the dollar is just a rule of thumb, man. It's like a rough rule of thumb. Like if they're considering a price in that range, like, yeah, you might be able to do it. But like, I mean, we do deals all the time where they're not 70 cents on the dollar. I mean, in San Diego, if you can get a deal at 80 cents on the dollar, 82, 83 cents on the dollar, you're going to make a fortune. New York, you 70 cents on the dollar, is a little bit easier to do, but I wouldn't go on a percentage, man. You got to really figure out what is the property worth renovated, right? That's one number. And then instead of doing the 70% rule, figure out what the property's worth as is. Because if you're wholesaling properties, like that's the big number you're looking for. What is this thing worth the way it sits before it hits the market? And then from there, you reverse engineer like how much profit you want to make, how much is going to cost to close, what if you have to pay commission, and then that's your offer. And that might be near the 70% rule, that might not be. But I think you don't want to be so hard and fast with that rule. You want to just use it as a quick rule of thumb. But really, you got to know what's the property worth fixed up, and then what is it worth as is. And then the rehab is usually the difference between those two numbers for the most part, logically speaking.
I agree. I mean, I have deals all the time that it's 80% of ARV, but I make $5,000. Am I going to throw away $5,000? No.
Nah.
So Murad says, he asked, from upstate New York, what's the easiest state to wholesale? And Greg, I'm in upstate New York. Let's get some JV deals rocking.
To answer the easiest state, I don't know like if there's like a definitive answer for that, but I think any state will work. It just depends on, I think you got to get focused. The biggest thing is you got to get focused. Like if you're in upstate New York, you got to, if you want to do it there, you got to get laser focused on that's your market. You're going to be doing marketing there for at least 6 months, if not longer. And then from there, you'll find success. But if you start scattering everywhere and tiptoeing into one market and dripping this marketing campaign, you're just going to get washed away because there's no depth there. So if you want to get some JV deals going in New York, what I would say to you is I actually have people bring me deals all the time. Find properties, find sellers who want to sell. And then when you're stuck on the deal, send me a message on Instagram. Hey, Greg, got this property. And then at that point, I know you already have a deal. You're working a lead. And then I'd be happy to help with you, tell you, what it's worth. And I'd be happy to partner with you on it, whether I buy it from you or because I'll buy properties off wholesalers too. So whether I buy it or we wholesale it together, I would say go find a deal first. And then when you're stuck on the deal, if you get stuck on the deal, I'd be happy to help you at that point. But yeah, the state thing, I think any state, it could be easier. Any state, it could be hard. But New York is the only state that is a little different where you got to deal with attorneys. Yeah.
And we got Rick Ginn here. What's up, Greg? What's up?
Hey, what's going on, Rick? What's going on, man?
Oh, man. So let's see. I love that. At what price would you feel like you're giving it away?
Oh, man, that question's gold, dude. It works so well, man. It gets them to do what they're not going to do.
You got to get your credit card reader out here because this is stuff people charge so much money for, and you're just giving it away. It's amazing. Jay asked a pretty good question here. I didn't ask this. I feel bad. How long did it take you to get your first deal?
Oh, man. It took me – well, my first dollar I made in real estate, it took me 9 months, and it wasn't a wholesale deal. It was my buddy who's one of my good friends. He had a property that he was – because he's been wholesaling longer than me. So he had a property he wanted me to look at for him because he didn't live near this property. It was right down the street from my house, my old house. And I went there, took a picture of the property, and drove back. He gave me 10% of the deal, so I made $1,000. So that was my first, I guess, deal technically, but it really was garbage. That took 9 months. My first wholesale deal took me a year, man. By the time I started till I got a paycheck, it was a straight up year. I know that's not the answer people want to hear, but that was the way it was for me.
I want to point this out too. So he came from 9 months, $1,000. And what was your biggest deal you did this year for 2020? You came from $1,000 5 years later. What's your biggest deal?
This year I think it was 80. I think
$80,000.
Yeah. No,
what was your biggest deal?
75. So 75. Sorry, I'm thinking it.
Okay.
I have one right now where I probably will make 100 on it, but that hasn't closed yet. But yeah, I mean, we did the deals. I like big deals, but yeah, 75,000 was this year. It was a nice rehab banger we did. Yeah.
$1,000. Bring it to 6-figure deals, guys. It's not impossible, guys. And I mean, he's in New York too. So some follow-up questions, quick ones from Jay also is, what's your number one lead source starting and what is it now?
Starting out in the very, very beginning, it was bandit signs. I don't do them anymore because I just don't see an ROI there. But if you're scrappy in the beginning, man, you will get deals and leads from it. You just have to do it consistently. Right now, my best marketing channel, I'm still going to say direct mail, man. It just produces, bro. I just bought a property with $95K of equity. It's a rental. And it was a direct mail lead where the seller mailed me back. It wasn't even she called, she mailed me back. I got the letter, emailed her. We did the deal basically through email. We got on the phone 3 times. and 95K of equity. That goes right down to the net worth, like right there. I bought the property for 65. It's worth what, like 145, and it's a straight cash cow right now. So I mean, direct mail always works because it's momentum based and it's timing based. And if you send enough mail, you're gonna definitely do some deals from it.
All right. So last couple questions here. This is a really good one. I think a lot of people need to know this. Have a cash buyer ever been fake? And if so, how can I tell?
Oh, dude. I've dealt with so many jerks, man. Here's a good cash buyer tip. So if you guys like really, this will really help you guys. So and this is tough in the beginning. So I would advise in the beginning, if you can't close yourself, you need to align with someone who can close in your market, right? Because that means that you guys together are like, 1 + 1 = 2, right? So if you can close, or if you can align yourself with someone who can close, if a cash buyer ever gets flaky on you, you're just going to buy it yourself, right? Or that person might buy it from you. So cash buyers have definitely been fake on me. They have flaked. They've been tire kickers, and those people just get eliminated. Like, I don't wish ill will on them, but if you say you're going to buy a file from me and then you can't perform for some reason, I'm just not going to treat you the way I treated you before. I'm not going to be rude to you, but I know that you probably don't operate with integrity, so I'm not going to give you much time because it's a waste of everyone's time, right? And you can tell, I think, when you don't get, when there's not a lot of urgency from the buyer, right? Because if a cash buyer really wants your deal, they're going to freaking be like, dude, did you get the money in? Did you call my attorney? Did you do this? Did you do that? And they're going to be like up your ass. But if you're dealing with a flake, they're going to peter out on you. They're going to start to not return your calls. They're going to ghost you. They're going to give you some BS excuse. And that's really how you can tell if you're dealing with a knucklehead or a serious buyer. Yeah,
that's a big one. I would say
it's a big deal. Yeah.
Jaquane says, "What's up? What's up?"
Yo.
Kelly asks, I think you've answered this question before though, but who do you guys use for texting, Batch or?
I use Launch Control right now. I used to use Sherpa, but their opt-out thing just made no sense anymore, so I had to get rid of that. Just because I liked Sherpa, I thought they were great, but I just the opt-out thing and the no Verizon deliverability. It's like a third of people who have cell phones in this country, so it just the math doesn't make sense if you're not hitting those people.
And last question here: how did you guys find mentors starting out?
Oh man, that's a good question too. If you want a mentor, and let's say you don't have money to pay for coaching, it depends on your situation. I reached out to local guys who are my really good friends now that I've done hundreds of thousands of dollars of business with. I reached out to them and I was upfront with them, hey, I'm a new investor. I'm brand new. I think everyone says that, probably they've heard that a million times, but I look to add value to them first. I didn't say can I pick your brain and extract everything from your head and then go waste my time and do nothing. I was like, hey, how can I help you out? How can I serve you? What can I do to add value to you in your business? Because I know that when you ask a question like that, odds are one of those guys is going to probably have a problem that you can help solve. So I actually worked for 2 investors. They're my 2 good friends, and I worked for them. I think the one guy I worked for 4 or 5 months, I was his lead manager, and it got me learning how to talk to sellers, right? Made a little bit of money with him there. The other investor, I was his acquisitions guy for 4 or 5 months, did a couple deals with him. Then I started wholesaling in properties, but I added value in their business by serving a role that they needed, filled for a time. And then from there, they taught me a lot about how the business works, how to get deals, logistics, all that stuff. And, you got to seek to serve before you, try to ask for something. Because if you just, if you just go out and you just ask for stuff and people don't know you and they've never heard of you, they might ignore you. They might not ignore you. I don't know. But if you reach out and you say, hey, how do I help you? I'm new. I want to learn this business, but how do I add value to you first? The mentor you reach out to is going to notice that you're different from the other people. And then they're going to be like, oh, well, you want to find some houses for me? Do you want to call some of my old leads for me? And then you add value to them. And then in exchange for that, they'll add value to you. So that's what I would do. That's how I did in the beginning.
Boom. And question for me here is I've been listening to your podcast for a while. So what is the Pave the Way podcast?
Yes. So it is my podcast show that I interview, a lot of real estate guys. Actually, I got Andy Frisilla is coming on the show next month. I got Chris Voss coming on in December. So I don't just interview real estate guys. I interview some, serious entrepreneurs and, authors and stuff like that. But it's just my show, man. I put out 2 shows a week. It's a real estate business entrepreneurship show. I try my best to make the interviews really interesting, because I want to figure, like, with my listeners, like, what would they want to ask them if they were, interviewing them like me. So put out 2 shows a week, man. It's a lot of fun. I built some great relationships from it, and it's available anywhere, iTunes, Spotify, the whole thing. And I have cool guests like Zach Ginn coming on the show. I mean, we're going to put your show out in a couple weeks here. So it's my podcast. So, if you got some value from the show today, I'm sure, my podcast will definitely help you out too.
Boom. And obviously it's your Instagram too. I'm going to pop that up one more time. How else could someone reach out to you?
If they want to get in touch with me, I would say the best way to get in touch with me would be, let me just double check and make sure.
Take your time.
I would say they can shoot me a message on Instagram. I think that's the best way to do it. If they want to email me, if they're in the Hudson Valley, I'll give you my email address if you want to get in touch with me there. I might not respond right away, but I will definitely will get back to you. It might take a couple days or a couple weeks. But if you go greg@velocityhousebuyers.com, that's my my business email address. Reach out to me there. I'll definitely get back to you. So between messaging me on Instagram or hitting me up on email, I'll definitely get back to you. I'd love to help you and add value to you.
Boom. Thank you so much, Greg, for coming on today. Is there any parting thoughts you have for the guests before we sign off?
Yeah, man. I would say the best advice I could give people, I actually gave this, I was on another podcast yesterday, and I said there's like 3, and this is just from my own experience. Like, I probably didn't invent this, but I've noticed I've been doing this every day for 5 years now. So like, this is like all I've known, right? My whole career, right? Like, I graduated college and did this. There's like 3 types of days out there, as an entrepreneur. You got your up days where you feel like you crushed it. You freaking, you did that deal, you negotiated that crazy property, you feel like $1 million. Those are up days. You got these down days where the sky's falling, the deal falls apart, the buyer flaked on you, your bank account's at 0. And then, so those are the down days, right? Like, we've all had those. And then you got these like neutral days, which are like, you make a little bit of progress, you do a podcast show recording, you get a couple leads, you maybe get an offer accepted, but it doesn't get signed. You get a marketing campaign at throw. You feel like you didn't crush it, but you made some progress. And you got to be aware of those 3 types of days. And you got to understand that in order to get to the up days, you got to hit those neutral days consistently. And when you have an up day, remember, you're going to have a down day. And then when you have a down day, you feel like you want to freaking stick your head in the sand. On the other side of the spectrum, you're going to have those up days as an investor, as an entrepreneur. So I think if you can be aware of those 3 days, and when they, not if they happen, when they happen, understand maybe this podcast, remember this podcast, and you won't feel like you're the odd man out. So that's the best advice I can give your listeners, wrapping up.
Wow. Thank you so much for coming on, Greg. I know my audience is going to be watching this, rewinding, going back. It's a really good one. Thank you guys so much. Please check out Pave the Way podcast. A lot of value, all for free. So I appreciate you guys coming on. I'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Thanks for having me, buddy.